Today, there are 2 million descendants of French-Canadian immigrants living in New England. These are our stories. Welcome to the French-Canadian Legacy Podcast.
Venez tous jeunes filles et garçons, je vais vous raconter l'histoire de notre immigration ici au USA, de grands aventuriers, de pays étrangers.
Bonjour everyone, this is Melody and we're back with French Canadian news. We'll start with a new blog post on Query the Past by Patrick Lacroix titled Franco-American Politics in Northern New England. Patrick writes, Beyond the industrial centers of Manchester and Nashua, reports from the interwar period attest to the extensive Franco-American presence in town halls across New Hampshire and the numerous state legislators sent to Concord. Franco-Americans represented Newmarket, the manufacturing towns located on the Cocheco and Salmon Falls rivers, Rochester, Somersworth, Rollinsford, and Dover, Keene and Claremont in the western part of the state, Franklin and Laconia in the center, and, of course, Berlin. Check out the post for more. In time for Memorial Day weekend, we have an article on Franco-American news and culture by Juliana LaRue titled, A Time Traveler Monument Remembered on Memorial Day. This essay was published in the Goose River Press Anthology 2023, and Juliana has reshared it on her blog with some personal touches added. Moving on to podcasts, Franco-American Pathways is back with episode 18, Voices of Fort Kent, Robert and Beatrice Daigle. In this episode, Robert Daigle shares his experiences with the French language in Maine and beyond. A French teacher at the Fort Kent Community High School and Valley Rivers Middle School, Robert grew up between two languages and discusses the challenge of honoring the distinct vocabulary, idioms, and pronunciations of the St. John Valley while ensuring that his students can also communicate with the Francophone world at large. Be sure to check out the episode. And now on to events. On June 7th at 1 p.m., join the fun at the Josée Vachon House Party, where she will be playing French-Canadian rhythms and songs at the Franco-American Center at Crossland Hall on the UMaine campus in Orono, Maine. Contact Lisa Michaud at lisam@umaine.edu if you have questions about the event. On June 22nd from 3 to 7 p.m., check out the Leominster French-Canadian Festival, where you'll find plenty of French-Canadian foods and other vendors. Joseph Bolton, the organizer behind this festival, was a recent guest on FCL, so be sure to learn more about the Leominster French-Canadian Festival in that interview. And of course, check out the Leominster French-Canadian Festival Facebook page for more updates. That's all I've got for you this time. Everything I've covered today will be linked in the French Canadian Legacy Podcast episode description. Merci for listening.
Thank you, Melody. Now, this week's conversation is with Emilie-Noelle Provost. So she is the author a recent novel called The River is Everywhere. And it's a really, really cool novel. I had the opportunity to read it prior to our interview. And this book has won a number of awards even since our conversation. It's won the 2023 Indie Excellence Award finalist for literary fiction. In 2023, National Indie Excellence Award Sponsors Prize. Same year, American Fiction Award finalist in the Coming of Age category. And in 2024, so just this year, American Legacy Award finalist for the Coming of Age category. So obviously he's getting a ton of recognition, this novel, and I can see why, for good reason. And it's going to follow the story that's going to be very familiar to a whole lot of people who listen to this podcast. You're going to meet characters whose Catholic background is going to play an impact. And the action's going to take us to New Brunswick, where a lot of the themes and characters are, again, going to be super familiar. Even if you're not yourself from Acadie, still a lot of what we encounter in the novel when we head up to New Brunswick are all things that are super, super familiar to the story, especially to anybody who's been listening to this podcast. So to have a novel introduce you to these characters and take you to these places, I thought was really, really fun and really fascinating. So it's a really cool conversation. So next week's episode, Emilie-Noelle Provost. All right. Well, you said it's in your biographical information. It did come up during the course of our discussion that you are big into hiking. You are all about, when you're not writing, you are on the trails in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. How did that become a passion for you? How long have you been doing that?
Probably about 4 years. And the story behind it is, I don't know, most hikers have like some story, but about 4 years ago, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer.
Oh, wow.
going out and walking and being in the woods was the only thing that made me feel better. And up to that point, I had pretty much always had desk jobs and wasn't in great shape. But it made me feel better. So I just kept doing it. And my husband also, we did it together. So we were both hiking. And eventually just the trails around here just weren't challenging enough anymore. I didn't feel like I was doing anything. So we sort of just worked our way up to smaller mountains. And then after about a year, it took a year to get in good enough shape to hike a 4K. Hike one of those days. But, after a year, we started doing those, and we finished all of them. We finished the 48 in like 2021. So
that's
now,
awesome.
so now we're working on doing them all in all the 4 seasons. And
that is kind of crazy.
And in the winter, we've been working on the winter, and we hiked all the 4Ks in Vermont, and we're working on Maine this summer.
Yeah, so for those who might not be from this area, it's a really big deal if you complete all the 4,000 footers in the White Mountains. It's oftentimes I had a couple of friends who do it when they introduce themselves to others. That's literally one of the first 2 things that come out of their mouth is the fact that they have done it. Now, did you also throw yourself a giant party when you completed the last one?
I didn't, which is kind of typical of me because I'm sort of introverted.
Okay. What was the last one you finished?
West Bond.
Okay.
Bond Cliff.
Gotcha.
Which is in the middle, if you're not familiar with the geography, it's in the middle of this very remote part of the White Mountains called the Pemigewasset Wilderness. In order to hike all the bonds, it's like at least 20 mile traverse. Maybe 20. It was about 20. We did it in the winter this year. It was 24 miles because the road was closed.
That's wild.
So, and it's been kind of great though, because, I'm in really good shape now and healthy. I have like awesome blood work. Like my doctor was like, wow, and, but I didn't start the first mountain I ever climbed. The first time I climbed a mountain, I was 48 years old.
That's awesome.
So, I finished 48 when I was 50.
That's very cool.
So, and my 50th birthday, I did Traverse of the Wildcat, and my birthday's in January. So,
that seems. I mean, being from New Hampshire, I know what the White Mountains look like in winter, and I'm not going anywhere near that in winter. No way.
It can be dangerous, and it can be you can screw yourself up if you don't know what you're doing, and if you don't check the weather and all of that. So we are very careful.
I'm sure.
I actually haven't been up there in a few weeks because April is really not great. Because of the snow conditions, the melting snow can be kind of icky.
It's all mud,
mud and just mushy, snow. So, but I think I'm going to go on this weekend though.
That's awesome.
I can't go anymore. Yeah.
Now our fathers look at us and sigh with despair, to think that everything they love we simply do not share. But the spirit never dies, our culture will survive. Each of us must choose how much to keep alive. Each of us must choose how much to keep alive.
Special thanks to Josée Vachon for providing the music. You can find more about her at joseevachon.com. This podcast was produced and edited by Mike Campbell. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at fclpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at FCL Podcast for more information about the topics discussed. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this episode.